pretty much do whatever the hell you want. So, Andy, I didn't get to ask a question before. First of all, Andy wrote, every one of you has a Connected Real Estate magazine on your chair. Andy was kind enough to write the view from the top piece in there. So if you're interested in more from what he has to say, you can look in the magazine for his piece. But I wanted to ask, do I need a phone that has both 3.5 and is 5G ready if I want to use 5G on 3.5, or I simply need a 3.5 system?
If you want to use 5G eventually on 3.5, you've got to have a 5G phone. But there are 5G is not that far along then, so right. It'll be a while.
So to think about that, the replacement cycle might be, in order to get 5G on CBRS, I may need to replace my phone twice, right?
Yes, and make sure it's
There you go. Thank you to Google in the sky. Thank you. Well, I'd like to introduce our panelists today. By the way, that was a really great speech, and thank you, Andy. We have today one from each category, one person from each category. Saleem Baksh from Silverstein Properties is with us today, and Robb Napolitano from Brooksville. And so I'd like to start with Saleem. Even though this is kind of, Robb's comment was, the topic is really more of a rhetorical question than a real question for us to ponder here. But Saleem, from the standpoint of connectivity, you guys are incredibly active in what you're doing. And you sort of, as we've talked in the last months, you've been moving more towards a convergence strategy rather than getting people of each different type of service to work with you. Can you talk a little bit about that? So how important is connectivity, and where are you going in trying to make sure you get it for your tenants and for the employees of the building and other people?
Thanks, Rich, and thanks, guys, for having me here. So interesting, the question. Yes, heck yes, we need connectivity as a landlord. So I'll start with 2 weeks ago, we had a situation where major tenant on a fly, they wanted us to host 200 users in 24 hours. We were like, yep, absolutely. We can host you guys 200 users wireless. So that was done because that's where we're going, converged network. So in the past couple of years, we've been building out the trade centers and moving from traditional single network for BMS, other different systems. We're doing, converged networks. Okay, moving from 1 gig to 10 gig. Now, how do we advance on that? In the past, we were more concentrating on the back house infrastructure of supporting our team in running and operating the buildings. But now, as landlords, tenants, now how do we put that over as an offering or to assist tenants in situations where short-term or on a fly they need assistance? We can offer this where from the converged network, from a core network, we can spin off VLANs and provide a SSID to a client within 24 hours. They have their people show up next day with a laptop, they connect, they can work, and they're all happy. So that's a shorter way of answering that question. Do we need connectivity? And what we're doing now, the next level, the next step. So we own the risers. We have the fiber. We have the core. Where do we take that? The technology is the next piece where we talk about 5G. Do we have the equipment? Do we have the technology now to support 5G? And we have to think, 5G and higher. Build a technology in that back end now, so we can support that. And another layer to this is cybersecurity as well. So more devices with 5G. There's more devices can be supported, more speed. People are going to be connecting 4 or 5 devices. So now you have tons of devices. So cybersecurity is another piece to layer upon that. And our challenge now is, because it's separated infrastructure, the technology, and then cybersecurity, how do we get that in one shop? Now, in a situation where a tenant, high-paid tenant asked for Wi-Fi or a service, they don't care about the back end stuff until something happens. So we have to make sure that we have an integrator that can put everything together as one versus going to 3 different integrators to say, hey, there's a connectivity issue, there's a technology issue, there's a cybersecurity issue. So that's where we are now is to find integrators, find vendors, or even ourselves to run where we put that together.
So let me just break that down a little bit. So you are acting sort of as their carrier in the building, is that correct? In other words, you are the help desk and you are their service provider.
Ultimately, yeah, as a landlord, not just renting the space, but enhance that space where we're offering not only just a space to a landlord or a tenant, but a service as well, where even them going to one person for everything, where it's easier, it's trusted. Okay, they trust us to lease a space. Now, of course, supply. Now, it's, you read everything about 5G, and every article, every media, 5G cut the wires, right? Everybody wants show up with a device and be connected, but seamlessly it has to be, connectivity with security, separation, all of that stuff.
So you are their provider. In essence, how are you charging them for your services in this situation? Is that proprietary or is that something you can share?
That's proprietary. Well, right now we're still in the process of defining that, but it's really in the initial stage.
So you see the future as you being the landlord for their space, but you're giving them other services in their space, not just renting them a box.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Why not?
Well, that's an innovative thought that I haven't heard from a lot of landlords lately. Certainly, it's a trend that they've been talking and thinking about, but that's interesting. So you're looking, when you're talking to vendors, you're looking for companies that can give you convergence, the fiber being a little bit of a different issue. You're bringing plenty of fiber in, you own the riser, you manage the riser yourself, and now you become their provider. Are there a lot of clients in these buildings, a lot of tenants that are using that now, or is it something you're moving towards?
So we're not taking it away from the carriers, allowing them in the building. We just want to be one of the options. So tenants have option to use whatever carrier is in the building, but there's another option.
Gotcha.
And comes with different. So and time is the biggest seller for this, where turning up a circuit, it's not a 24-hour situation. It's days, months, depends on who you're dealing with. 24 hours.
Right, so you're not giving the tenant the space, and then he has to call Verizon, and Verizon says we'll be there in 90 days, and they have to wait for that. So let's come back to that. I'd like to get Robb involved. Robb, talk a little bit about Brooksville. I think where everybody's more familiar with Silverstein's properties, but talk about Brooksville, what you guys own, and kind of go in the same direction that we just talked about.
So the Brooksville company made the news about a year ago. We bought the largest federally subsidized property in the U.S. called Spring Creek Towers in Brooklyn, 5 miles from JFK. It's 5,881 units, 17,500 people on 150 acres, 48 buildings, 8 garages. It has its own police force that is NYPD certified, its own power plant. And what makes this unique, and you're probably sitting up here, why is a multifamily guy talking about this? Because we have a fiber network on the property that is not being used. And so, in addition, and I'll speak from both sides, Brooksville has a joint venture with Pinnacle, the third largest multifamily in the US, called Pinnacle City Living, that manages Class A luxury in New York. So from the luxury and the affordable side, I will tell you now, it's all about experience. Now let's go back to Spring Creek Towers. So it was built in the late 60s, okay? The way they did it was they took, instead of putting UHF antennas on top of every building, they had a 6-foot satellite dish. And what they used was coax cable in every unit to connect to each building, to a hub that would connect to the satellite dish. Wow. Well, about 10 years ago, they said, hey, We're going to get rid of the satellite dish. Cablevision came in years before that. They didn't touch any of the in-building infrastructure. They put their own infrastructure in, believe it or not, because that's what they do. They manage it. And then what happened was they decided to put in fiber. So they put a fiber network in 4 strands to each, I'll say, grouping. There are 8 groupings, so it has one hub for each grouping, and then they daisy chain along. Now, think of the LIE. We're only using 2 of 8 lanes. So I get there a year ago, and I'm like, wow, how do we figure this out? Because we're totally underutilizing this network. What can we do? So we talked to several providers, and this is where I think it's relevant. How do we bridge the digital divide? How do we give residents that their income is low, that can't afford high-speed internet or can't afford the getting on the internet with their phones, how do we give them this opportunity? So we're looking to partner, and we're right now in negotiations, to take advantage of this fiber. And what we're gonna do is they're gonna use our fiber, 2 strands that are totally not being utilized, okay? They're gonna take our fiber, they're gonna connect to the building, and then they're gonna use the coaxial system that was used for the UHF, okay, and connect the residents. The potential rev share and opportunity. So here's the win-win case. We win because we're providing a service to residents that don't have it. They have a choice. And I'm gonna capitalize on something that you were talking about. It's about the experience, okay? At the end of the day, IT has 3 customers. They have the clients, they have the employees, and they have the residents. The experience. Coming here today, I was on the train from Westchester. I had 4 bars, 4G, and I couldn't get on the site I wanted to do because somebody else was streaming. The experience is terrible. The networks are saturated. So everything we do is how do we make the resident experience better? And that is where we're going with this. And our goal is to give the residents an opportunity. We are not going to be the utility provider. That's key and foremost, especially in a federally subsidized building where everything we do has to be regulated by HUD and HCR. We don't want that problem. We're going to partner with someone that does and is going to take advantage and do the support desk calls. All we're going to do is provide the conduit.
Gotcha. That's really interesting. So Brooksville also has commercial space, am I right?
Limited commercial. So part of Spring Creek Towers is we have a shopping mall, okay, where our anchor tenant is a supermarket. We're looking to expand that and see how we can, so part of this idea with the fiber and utilizing it is threefold. 1, the residents. 2, how do we maximize the opportunity with our commercial tenants and give them an opportunity to take advantage of some of the space, offsetting the cost. And 3, 5G, okay? This is the infrastructure of 4G can't host it. We have fiber. How do we bring 5G antennas that we can then host it within the area right outside of JFK?
Right, but I would assume that one of the tenant satisfaction pieces of this, somebody goes into the supermarket and says, you know, I think we need milk and bread, so I want to make a call and call home and say, yeah, do we need milk and bread too while I'm here? And if there's no self-service, it's that frustration that you're getting away from the tenant experience, right?
Right. So currently we have 3 providers on site. We have the cell towers in place, but the cell towers are eventually going to have to be replaced, right, with 5G. And if you don't have the fiber infrastructure already in, who's going to pay for it?
Right. You were right on with that. I don't know if it's that simple to be able to just replace the gear that's there. And I think that's where, you know, this 5G is really puzzling many of us as to exactly what it's going to look like in that situation. So back to Saleem. Saleem, you've begun the process of sort of looking at buildings that were designed 6, 7 years ago, that were, you know, done in the way you did things 6, 7 years ago. But now you're building new buildings and buildings are being modified. What is the process, besides just the convergence piece? Are you beginning to think about CBRS? Are you thinking about the fact that you have enough fiber coming to the buildings? What are the considerations that you're looking for? And what kind of vendors? I mean, this is where I think you'd really help this room, both you and Rob. What kind of vendors are you looking for to help you with the process of taking buildings that are only 6 or 7 years old, but turning them into modern communications infrastructure?
So that's a great question. We have older buildings, iconic buildings like 120 Broadway, where the risers are full right now. We want to bring in a Verizon circuit. The guy takes 2 days to find a path. So there are tons of cabling, whatever, coax and all of that stuff there. How do we get that out? And you can't core drill now. The building is already, everything, all the spaces, all the clouds, there's no room. So I think vendors who can assist with that part of cleaning these conduits out so that now, 10 gig fiber, it's the cost of running 10 gig now it's significantly less than a couple of years ago. So even if you get a clear path down one of these older buildings, you're still ahead of the game running 10 gig fiber now. So I think that's the step is where, who can assist with that to take us there to another level.
Right. So, Rob, you're in a different situation. We've joked about a couple of the kinds of vendors and the vendors that you think you need to help you at this stage. But tell the audience, sort of what are you looking for? Where are you looking? And what kind of help are you in need of?
So I'm a firm believer that a vendor, any vendor, okay, it's not a client-vendor relationship, it's a partnership. And in that partnership, we want partners that are going to help access and maximize our value. At the end of the day, that's why we're all here, right? Profitability, make money, how your business model is. Our business model is maximizing the asset, making sure that our residents and the resident experience is great. But at the end of the day, we want you to help us, help us, right? So what we look for is we don't want people coming in and selling me, a whole big system that we don't need. 6367 Wall Street, which is a Pinnacle City Living managed building, has the only resident speakeasy in the building, okay? Now, in the area, I should say. So residents come, we don't overcharge them, we're creating this sense of community. As such, when we renovated this from commercial to residential, we look for partners to help us maximize the value of the asset. And what we did is, instead of bringing in a DAS, we decided that we're going to create a bigger sense of community by saturating the area of the community spaces. So whether it's the rooftop deck, the gym, Wi-Fi in the bar, they all have Wi-Fi access. I should say also, the management of my company and a former company I worked for used to manage Peter Cooper-Stuyvesant Town. So there, we saw a totally different aspect. We saturated the entire community, okay, all 80 acres, with employee Wi-Fi, something that we're thinking about at Starrett City. We need partners that are going to help us meet our business goals. So if our business goal is employee experience, resident experience, or owner experience, that is what we look for.
Right. So I get the Wi-Fi. Overwhelm them with Wi-Fi and cover everything. Right. What about the cell phone coverage? It sounds like it's important for that tenant experience too.
The biggest challenge in previous companies when we do development, that is the biggest challenge that multifamily has, is first of all, who brings in the DAS? How do you get cell phone coverage? And you want coverage throughout the entire building. So that is, I'll say, a headache that multifamily, especially developers, have had since day one. And depending on the age of the building, if you manage a building, you take it over and you renovate, how thick are the walls, right? If that was built in concrete and has X amount, that signal's not going through. Is the worst selling point, because when you have these Gen Ys, okay, millennials coming through your building, what do you think they're doing? They're on their phone. And they're testing the cell phone signal. So we have to every multifamily manager has to get really creative. Now, there are providers out there that will help you bring signals in, but again, what's the cost at the end of the day?
Geez, Rob, you're starting to sound like me with this. We need cell phone coverage everywhere. But that is an important thing. And when people come through the buildings, and Saleem, you got to find this too. When people come into your building with a broker, the first thing the broker does is whip out the phone and go, oh, there's no coverage here. What are we going to do about that? So that really brings us to another topic that's near and dear, especially to you, which is a sad situation, but public safety. How is the public safety piece of this? We have a lot of the folks that are in this room do a lot of public safety work. How does the public safety part of that work for you? And are you focused on that a lot of your day, or is it something that just kind of has been put in and worked?
Well, it's in place. We're actually very serious about that, but it's separated from it's really operational, and it's, you know, thinking back of, you know, back in the day, public safety, you know, certain equipments need POTS line. Now, even the carriers now, it's not that. It's the so considering. You know, building out a building, and we have X amount of, you know, public safety equipments we have to get online. You know, you go into Verizon, I want a POTS line, right? Now, it's not a POTS line, it's a tone that you're getting through fiber, right? Now, is that redundant? Is that set up in a way where, so we literally do the homework to trace that out all the way to make sure that, you know, this thing, if a UPS or a surge protector goes bad, you don't have a dead tone. So you know, it's a collaboration with the operational team and us to make sure.
So in other words, you have public safety gear that's obviously in these buildings. Then you have to make sure that the batteries aren't going dead, that the POTS line is working, that you've got all the things working, because again, it doesn't go on every day. It's not something you test. You know, I could make a call 2 minutes ago and now I can't. It's something that only happens if there's an emergency, that you know it's not working.
And it's a different technology now. It's not a tone. It's not on copper, where it doesn't need electric.
Right. Rob, what about in your world? Obviously, public safety stuff has got to be paramount. Are you focused on that, or is it something that's just become ordinary?
So Starrett City was managed by the same company for the 40 years of its existence. And the feeling was, if it's not broke, don't fix it. So public safety, you know, is a big issue because we've brought in people. Everybody's NYP certified, gun carrying. I mean, this is one of the toughest districts in the NYPD, East New York. And our site of 150 acres, there's very little crime. And so public safety is a factor because we need to keep our residents safe. So it's all antiquated, but I will say this. We are now looking at newer technologies, creating a command center, improving the way we communicate, making sure that bridging the digital divide to our public safety officers and supporting them in the way that they need to be supported. And that's first and foremost.
Right, so you've got make sure the residents have the ability to dial 911. Obviously, you got that cell phone's got to work.
911 is different. They don't come to us. 911 goes to NYPD. So
right.
Public safety is different from NYPD. We don't arrest, we hold, we detain, we write tickets, but that's about the extent.
Right, but I'm talking about, so a resident has a kitchen fire.
Right.
What would they dial? Would they dial 911 in the building? Wouldn't they?
Right, yeah.
Right, so they would dial 911. So the ability that they've got to use their cell phone to dial 911 sort of is the table stakes.
Sure,
Right.
I mean, the fact that they are in communication, absolutely.
Right, okay. So then the fireman comes to that apartment, they've got to make sure that the radio system works for them. And so in New York, we have something called the ARCS system, which is sort of the always off system rather than, you know.
Right.
But so is that something that you guys test all the time? Has that been, that equipment been redone since you guys bought this? How have you worked that public safety? Was that still something that you're exploring?
So we're still exploring. One of the things that we're exploring is an emergency command center. So in the event that something happens at JFK, we can support New York, NYPD, FDNY, EOM. So we're actually talking about that right now, and using Brooklyn Sports Center also sits on this campus, believe it or not, and we renovated it over the last year. And part of the renovation is thinking about what do these emergency response need in the event of emergency, and how can we support them?
So, Saleem, back to you. One of the things that's a hot topic right now is this prop tech area or property technology that feeds off of connectivity. You know, and I was having a discussion with somebody that had a tenant amenity software platform. Actually, it was a system that unlocked the doors. So, you know, you waved your phone and you got into your building. And I asked what platform it was working on, and the guy laughed at me like, what do you mean, what platform? It works on Wi-Fi. As if Wi-Fi was air. You have to have your own Wi-Fi system because of security concerns and all that. So from your standpoint, though, in a tenant amenity world, how do you view that? You must have people knocking on your door 24/7 to try to sell you these tenant amenity platforms where people can turn the temperature up 3 degrees. They can, close the blinds, automatically. How is that fitting into your connectivity world?
So we are actually, we have our own commercial app right now where we roll out to tenants. And the biggest piece of that is integration. We're not looking to develop, a brand new platform, but to integrate. And that's the part where we're looking for. Somebody has the technology already. Why not integrate that with us where you can use the phone? And we are in a massive renovation of amenity space right now where we want to have the tenants use their phone for everything, yoga class. And that's why going back to the beginning of connectivity is we own the infrastructure. We can provide that connectivity throughout the building spaces, amenity space, rooftop. So, a user doesn't need their card anymore. They can use their app and, be able to use the building efficiently.
Gotcha. So, Rob, even more to the point with your system, maintenance, in other words, finding an app that could be used for tenants to say, I have a broken window, I have a broken faucet, I need help with this. And also to say, we're part of a community, there's going to be something hosted in the lobby. Are you guys looking at platforms like that, and how does it fit in with your overall connectivity strategy?
So when we took over the property last year, we identified our 4 major risks. We identified that we committed over $150 million in capital improvements, and we're managing by Excel spreadsheet. We identified a procurement process from procure to pay all through the life cycle of inventory management, where we have $2 million of inventory sitting in a warehouse, I'll say a garage really, and it's done by paper. Dispatching, work orders done by paper. And we recognize that these are huge risk factors. So as we speak, we've partnered with an internal company in multifamily, and we are right now rolling it out, okay? We're gonna do a work order management system, and we're talking about how to make sure that our supers, when they're going to do a work order, what is the connectivity device? Do we give them iPhones? Do we give them iPads? Our inspectors, we're rolling out iPads, and it's really interesting because the tech services guys, we just want iPads. And I go, well, I have a few questions. Do you need to use them in the field? Do you not use them? No, we just want iPads. Just get them. And so they got 2 iPads on their own. They didn't get cellular. And lo and behold, their guys that go and do the inspections with this inspection app can't load it up. So they got to go back to the maintenance, connect to the Wi-Fi. Now, these are the things that we're talking universally, so we're making our guys work smarter, not harder, and by the end of the year, we'll have a platform in place, so if somebody is working in one building and an emergency call and an urgent call comes in and say the next building over, that we can reassign them that process.
Imagine if UPS worked like that back in the day. The guy would go to the warehouse, he'd pick up a package, he'd take it to where he had to go, you'd have to go back to the warehouse. We know, I don't want to overstep our time frame. We're still good, but what I'd like to do, okay. Then I'd like to wrap up with one quick question for each of you. We're not going to do questions from the audience today, I assume. How would you like vendors to approach you about the issues we've talked about here? These are, there's a room full of people that are vendors here. How would you like them to approach you?
Well, back to Rob, it's really a partnership, and it's not about selling me something, but working with us to say, hey, this is how we can achieve that.
Gotcha. That's a good point. Rob?
How are you going to reduce my cost, right? How are you going to think about us? How are you going to partner? And it doesn't have to be hard costs. It can be soft costs as well. How do we gain efficiencies? What are other clients doing? And I don't want to know the other client's secret sauce, but what can you bring and what value do you bring to us, and not just selling us a solution that we may want? Don't give me what I want, give me what I need. They're 2 very big things, different.
Great. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
I appreciate it very much. Thank you all for listening.
Okay, thank you.
This is what a good panel